I want to take a moment and talk to you about the next piece. That first piece was called Arabesque, and the next piece is called Unbroken. And it has been a big undertaking for us to perform this piece. We've talked a lot about the compositional techniques, but we talked even more about the story that the composer is telling. The composer, Randall Sandridge, one of our favorite composers, we've learned that when he was a child, his mother experienced a mental break with reality and was hospitalized for a year to receive treatment and to get her mental state healthy again, so she was mentally healthy. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we had one of our district psychologists come in and talk to us today about what happens in the brain and what the composer is trying to tell us, and we want to take you on this journey. It's a really neat piece of music that will actually take you inside the mind of a person who is working through some mental health issues. And you will hear there's a theme that represents that person, there's a theme that represents their supportive family, there's a theme that represents the mind, and slightly altered theme that represents the distorted mind. You'll hear these themes as the person tries to navigate life, and then outside forces come. You can hear that theme trying to come through, and then everything stops and it can't. So they try again. And it's really incredible. But I would like to give you further context of the composer's work, because it's his experience, it's his story that he's trusting us to tell you tonight. So Randall Sandridge offers these programming notes. It says, during my childhood, my mother suffered a complete nervous breakdown and psychotic break with reality. Before this happened, there were many warning signs that she was experiencing mental health issues. There were moments when she would cry for no discernible reason, when her mood and character would change in an instant, and moments when she would seem withdrawn from everyone. However, these were infrequent, and as so, we all assumed that she was fine. She was not fine. Unknown to us, and even to herself, our mother was battling depression. Growing up in the time period when they did, both of our parents had been conditioned to see mental health problems as sources of shame, signs of weakness, and a failing character. Due to this, they did not seek help, even though they both knew something was wrong. The pressure built, the problems multiplied, and finally one day it all became too much for her to bear. My mother's breakdown was so severe that she was hospitalized for over a year. It was a terrifying ordeal as my two brothers, my father, and I watched her battle this crippling illness. However, there are two things that I will never forget from that time. First, I remember my mother's strength in finding her way back to us. And second, I remember my father's unwavering faith and fidelity to her as he stood by her side, kept the household together, and cared for both her and us as best he could. Their bond did not break, our family did not break. The title of this work, Unbroken, is in reference to three things. First is a description of my mother, who has learned to manage her illness and thrive in spite of it. Second, it is a reference to our family and how both my father and mother worked to ensure that it remained whole. My parents are my heroes, and I'm not shy about saying it. Their strength and this experience has also made me completely unafraid to utter the following statement. My name is Randall Sandridge, and I live with depression. Third, many people throughout the world experience mental illness. Too many are afraid of what happens, of what others will think, and what may happen to their relationships, their jobs, and their families if they seek help. They are afraid that they will be seen as weak, defective, or broken. It is my hope that this work may provide a starting place for productive discussions and be another tool that will help knock down the social barriers that prevent those that need help from seeking it. This piece of music is dedicated to my parents, Ron and Shirley Standridge, and to all the people and families who live with the challenges of mental illness. Lastly, to those who may be experiencing similar problems, please know this. You are not weak, you are not defective, you are not broken. And then he goes on to talk about the actual piece of music. I want you to have a better context of what you're about to hear, because once you do, this is really, we've played some pieces before, and I said, if you just let it, the music will take you for a journey. And you've told me, oh my goodness, it took me somewhere. And that's what's going to happen tonight. So let me give you a context about what you're going to hear. Unbroken begins inside the mind of the individual affected with mental illness. Overlapping pitches and pleasant dissonance reflect the workings of a mind in conversation with itself. The family motive, a series of 5 notes articulated in the piano, represents my parents, myself, and my 2 brothers. The mind theme, a 3-note motive that conveys both beauty and peace, is heard in the tenor voices and is repeated as the thought cloud develops. However, it becomes distorted by a half step, introducing an element of bitterness. Warning signs and cracks begin to become evident as various thoughts and emotions race and compete with each other until the individual cries out to silence them. A solo flute introduces the next segment as the individual tries to navigate the world and their life. The melody, Shirley's theme, is hopeful, melancholy, and brave. As it continues, it becomes distracted as the inner mind begins to exert more and more influence on the outer life. A 12-tone matrix is first heard in the piano as the individual's ability to cope begins to waver. A dialogue ensues in which the individual tries to assert their hold on the illness, assuring everyone that they are fine. The theme becomes more and more desperate as the individual struggles to keep themselves together. They make one last Herculean attempt before the inevitable break occurs. The work takes on a sinister, playful character as the individual enters a manic state. The clarinet introduces a new melody which is built on the distortive mind motive and leads the listener through a series of short episodes as the individual's mood and character change violently. Thoughts rush, leading nowhere, and in a world of turmoil and noise, the individual sees the world and themselves through a distorted lens. The atonal matrix and distorted mind motives are combined into a cacophony of rage and destruction as the individual loses control of their life. And then here's how everything wraps up. In the silence that follows, a lone clarinet bravely pulling itself from the wreckage, the individual begins the difficult process of acknowledging the illness and beginning to face it. Its strength and its confidence build until it emerges into a fanfare that is simultaneously triumphant and melancholy, able to cope with its problems, but aware of the challenges that lie ahead in living with this burden. The main theme returns as the individual resumes their life, unbroken and whole, but changed. The work ends as it began, inside the mind of the individual. There's still dissonance, but the dissonance is pleasant and peaceful. The final crescendo sounds as the individual looks towards the future with hope. So I would challenge you for the next few minutes to remove whatever distractions, whatever device you've got, whatever's on your mind right now, and take the context that you've just been given and let these performers take you on a journey. You're going to experience something that we don't experience any other way. This is Randall Standich's Unbroken.